This is Codified Wisdom. Conversations with leaders sharing what experience has taught them and what they know now that they wish they knew earlier. Hosted by Eric Eager, CEO and co-founder of 4Impact Data.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Codified Wisdom. And just a reminder where we explore journeys and insights beyond leaders who are shaping the future of business and relationships. And today's guest is Linda Fisk. She's CEO and co-founder of LeadHership Global. And she has built, I got to tell you folks, she has built a worldwide community dedicated to helping leaders grow their influence, impact, and legacy. Not only that, I mean, I've got to know her, and she's an amazing person, by the way. But she is a multi-award-winning CEO, TED Talk, speaker, author, university professor, board advisors, and I can just go on and on. But I know her heart is to really create opportunities and solve meaningful problems. But the thing I'm excited about is that before launching leadership, her journey, she served in leadership roles at YPO, Susan G. Komen, and she holds a PhD in clinical psychology. And bringing that such a deep understanding of human behavior, influence, and leadership dynamics to the workplace is really compounding impact to literally thousands of business leaders globally. And so today we're going to explore how does somebody in a PhD in psychology end up being CEO of a global network of leaders, and kind of how did she end up there? So, welcome to the show, Linda. Glad to have you on. And let's start at the very beginning. Tell us where you grew up and some of the experience that shaped your perspective on leadership and the opportunities that you may not even knew were before you even started your journey.
Thank you so much, Eric. I have to say, I am so excited to be on this podcast with you. Talk about an incredible, incredible legacy of leadership. You have created such an incredible impact in entrepreneurial ventures, in the lives of the people that have worked with you and for you. It's just been an incredible, incredible honor and privilege to be friends with you, to be in community with you, to be involved in your latest venture. So thank you so much, Eric, for allowing me to be a part of this.
Well, you're too kind. You're way too kind. And but thank you for those nice comments.
Oh, you're welcome. But it's so true. I will tell you that I grew up primarily in the Northeast, but there were a couple things that were striking about my childhood, I think. One is that my father had a position at a financial institution where his role was to open up new branches of the bank he worked for. So because he was always opening up a brand new branch, maybe it was taking over a failing bank, or maybe it was building the building, hiring the people, and starting the operations, we moved all the time. So we were moving every probably 3 to 6 months, which meant that I got very good at observing people, understanding sort of social dynamics, even in a classroom, and figuring out where I could fit in, where I could belong. I learned very quickly my place as the new kid in any environment, and who were the most likely suspects to be friends with, who I needed to, ingratiate myself with, who the power players were. I learned to understand social dynamics really, really quickly. The second thing that was a little bit different about my upbringing is that I am adopted. And I knew from a very early age that I was adopted. But in my family, there was no way of hiding that because my father was Native American. He looked like he had just stepped out of a John Wayne movie. And my mother was Asian, and she was absolutely beautiful. But I'm blonde, blue-eyed, and 5'9". So it's very clear that genetically, I was not connected to my parents. Well, I grew up in an age where adoption was not socially accepted. There was a lot of skepticism. There was a lot of unease around the idea of adoption. I remember being young and being teased and bullied because my parents looked different from me. And that led me to one of the biggest leadership lessons that I have taken with me since then. When I would get my feelings hurt, when I felt outcast, when I felt like I wasn't accepted, maybe because I was the new kid, or maybe because I didn't look the same as other families, my parents told me often, they said, listen, it is good to be different. It's, in fact, exactly what you want. You want to be memorable. You want to be distinctive. You want to be different. You don't want to be the same as everybody else. And it will take a lifetime for you to understand the person you were intended to be. And so right now, whatever's happening in your life right now is simply a lesson on the journey to discover who you're meant to be. And you don't want to be like anyone else, Linda. God created you uniquely for a purpose, and you were wonderfully and carefully designed. And everything that you are, including the family that you belong to, was uniquely created for your benefit. So you want to embrace these differences, and you want to embrace who you are. And again, it will take an entire lifetime for you to really begin to discover who you are, what your purpose is, what your mission and vision are, and really who you were meant to be on planet Earth at this date, at this time. And, you know, I really began to understand what they meant as I grew older and recognized that being different allowed me to be memorable. It allowed me to be unique, to be distinctive. And I have really come to embrace those things, even those things that other people may consider flaws. They may be considered a mistake. They may be considered something to be ashamed of. Actually, I consider those things to be unique differentiators that make me who I'm meant to be.
Wow. Wow. I mean, what an impactful point of advice and just guidance. Now, let me ask you about that, because now you get the chance to look back on that. But that's a tough road to hoe, as they say, while you're going through it, and having your parents support you on that. But when you're young and you're trying to fit in, and you're trying, and let's just say, when you're younger, the pressure is to conform, not to be different.
Right.
And so, to appreciate that guidance of your parents, what a blessing. But
Truly.
talk about,
And I know they went through their own difficulties. We had Child Protective Services called out to our home more than once because there was this rumor that somehow we didn't belong to our parents. And I know that was humiliating for them, and that was difficult for them. There were a lot of times that people would say, well, whose little girl is that? She can't be yours. And my father or my mother or both would say, yes, she's our daughter, with no explanation, with no apology, with no defensiveness, just simply, yes, she is our daughter and we're proud of her. And isn't she beautiful? And there was no need to explain. There was no need to defend. There was just sort of a clearing of understanding, right? And it was the dignity that my parents expressed in who they are and who we were as a family that really stuck with me. They were proud of me. They were proud of my family. They were proud of my brother and I, and they were absolutely delighted that they were able to have a child, even if that child was through adoption, meaning I wasn't biologically connected to them, but in terms of love and in terms of doing life together, we were absolutely a family.
oh my goodness. And that also probably had to teach you grit, had to teach you
Yeah.
adaptability. And and at that stage, could you ever imagine? Because now the level and where you're at and the impact that you're having to leaders globally, I just know, we don't have time to go into all the side stories that I know and how you help people and really just give it your time and effort. But that's exponentially impacting leaders globally in LeadHership Global.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Okay, so you're going through this. You have this incredibly supportive parent. And I just want to put a shout out to the parents out there. Hey, look at being that support, being that, and look what kind of impact that that legacy that they paid forward, man, you just don't know. Let's talk about, so you're in this, you're going through this. Could you ever imagine, did you see or did you manifest this idea that you were going to be in this being CEO and advising other CEOs? Did you see that at a younger age, or did you just kind of walk through these things and these things started getting unveiled to you, as I would say?
Yeah, I would say that another sort of interesting aspect of my growing up is that, in fact, I had a bit of a communications obstacle to overcome, in that I was a stutterer. And I stuttered very, very badly from the time I was in elementary school all the way to college. And in fact, because of that, I found it very difficult to have conversations with others. Certainly could never imagine standing in front of an auditorium of people and giving a talk. Never even thought I'd be able to stand in front of my classroom and give a speech. But by the time I hit college, I realized that if I wanted to not just visualize, but actually enact the life I wanted for myself, this was a disability that I was going to have to embrace, and I was going to have to face it head on. I was going to have to stop having coping mechanisms to deal with it and really try to surface some of the underlying issues associated with stuttering and see if I can't overcome it. So in college, I took every single public speaking course offered by the university. And my first year, I stood up in front of the class, fully prepared to give a talk, and passed out. So literally my first class for the first year, I pretty much passed out every single time, but I kept trying. And I went to speech classes, I went to counseling, I went to speech therapy, I took public speaking courses. I did everything I possibly could to understand why I was so gripped with fear at the idea of talking to someone. Even holding their eye contact was too much for me. But I knew that I had to, you talk about grit, I had to have the kind of mental toughness and the kind of perseverance necessary to overcome this disability if I had any shot of enacting and creating the life that I envisioned for myself. So while I never thought that I would be advising leaders, that I would be on the board of several really significant public boards, public companies, or I would be part of an advisory team for some of the most exciting startups and scale ups in the nation, I never thought that big and that broad. I did think I had something to offer. And in order for people to be able to hear me, I had to overcome this issue. So long story short, after 4 years of continuing to persevere, continuing to face all kinds of humiliating, embarrassing situations and saying, but I did better today than I did last week. But I stood up longer in front of people before I fainted this time than last time. I was able to, at the end of 4 years in college, I won the national debating honor. I won the national public speaking honor. I won the statewide speaking honor. And I became, I wouldn't say the most gifted speaker that I've ever seen. There are a lot of people a whole lot better than me. But I became the person I saw in my mind being able to communicate competently, with confidence, with a very clear mission and vision while I was in front of an audience of what I wanted to discuss or impart or inspire or motivate with. And I am very proud of the fact that I was able to overcome that in 4 years. And still yet, when I get flustered, I can
Yeah.
easily regress into my stuttering patterns. And when I get very flustered or very upset, I find that those same sort of speech patterns still manifest. But most of the time, I'm very cognizant of that, and I can communicate effectively. And I'm very, very proud of that.
Oh my gosh. Eh, That is incredible. And the grit, because all of us, for anybody that's listening to this, we all have that. They always teach in leadership to eat the frog first kind of thing in each day, and talk about have a glasses half full kind of 1% improvement every day of looking at and going, uh, hey, you can look at it either I failed today or I learned something new.
Yes.
And you really did take that. What did I learn? What did I innovate? What did I I learned that I could go longer. I could learn to do this. And then I would have never guessed. Again, this was so amazing is that talking to you, I would have never guessed in a million years that you had this problem because you're such a gifted speaker and a gifted communicator. And to work through that is an incredible part of your journey. Now we're going to progress into you go and decide you're going to get a PhD in psychology. And what led you to kind of go, okay, this is a calling. And then from that, let's talk about your professional career that you go from that on this journey of helping different leaders. How did you go from that to landing into influencing leaders and begin this journey of influence, helping, and assisting not only an amazing nonprofit, but then into leadership roles?
Yeah, I would say that, initially I wasn't even sure that I would be accepted to graduate school, honestly. And, by the time I applied to go to graduate school, I had been out of college for several years. And I thought, I don't know if I have the chops, if I have what it takes to even be accepted into college. But much to my surprise, I was offered a full scholarship at Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, Texas, for my master's degree. And through that master's experience, I thought, gosh, I love this. I am thriving, and I love research, and
Yeah.
I can't believe it, but I love statistics, and I love the methodology behind the research, and I love the impact that I can make in people's lives, and I love the therapeutic nature of what I'm learning and experiencing, and what I'm being trained for. It's just absolutely amazing. So after my master's degree at Southern Methodist University, I applied to several different universities for a PhD. Again, not really sure
Yeah.
that I would be accepted. And when Vanderbilt University offered me a full scholarship, a teaching assistantship, a research assistantship, it
Yeah.
was amazing. I received the only social sciences scholarship that Vanderbilt offered. And the entire first year, I had the most acute sense of imposter syndrome because I kept thinking, I don't even know if I should be here, let alone have the incredible generosity that Vanderbilt has offered me to be able to study here. And I will tell you that getting a PhD was absolutely the most daunting, the most challenging experience of my life, because you are teaching, you are learning, you are conducting your own original research, you're writing research papers, you're conducting therapy, you're being taught and trained as a therapist. So every single therapy session is being critiqued, it's being reviewed, and it was just so much. It was just you
Wow.
hear the expression "drinking from a fire hose." I felt like I spent 4 years drinking from a fire hose, but afterwards, I really recognized the power of words, the power of connection, the power of hope. And I really believe I brought that sensibility into my leadership from that point forward. I started really recognizing that what you say to people has such a deep impact and a ripple effect. and whether or not you are creating a sense of hope for the people that you're leading, for the people you're interacting with, meaning, yeah, maybe you had a disappointing day, but tomorrow can be different and tomorrow can be better. And you're always creating that sense of hope, that sense of redemption, that things can and will get better. That matters. And that the fact that you're expressing that you have faith in them as people, you have faith that they can overcome any of the challenges that they're facing. They can become the person that they envision for themselves, that whatever they're facing right now, whatever trauma, whatever, mental health issue that they may be facing right now, we can overcome it. There can be a brighter day. That sense of, investment into someone else's progress and that investment into someone else's success, I think transcends the therapeutic relationship. And it really is important in parental relationships, in coworker relationships, in leadership relationships. The people that report to you as a leader, they want to believe that you are deeply invested in their success, that you care for them as a human being first. And you want to set them up for success. You want them to succeed. You are invested in their success. And no matter what challenges they're facing, you're going to help them overcome those challenges. So that entire experience of going through my master's program, my PhD program, and even being in therapeutic relationships with people really taught me that some of the fundamental principles and practices in the modality of, I was a cognitive behavioral therapist, even in the modality of CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, that transcends a therapeutic relationship into all relationships. And it starts by being actively interested in someone else, understanding what motivates them, understanding what influences them, and deeply listening to them, deeply understanding who they are, where they're going, what matters to them, and then saying, how can I help? What can I do to make this easier for them, make this more achievable, make this more possible, give them the level of hope that they need to believe that they can actually reach those levels of success.
Wow. Man, I'm getting inspired right now. I'm ready to run out and take on a new challenge today. Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit. You have that kind of now fire burning in you. You're starting to see this. And then you start getting in, you start becoming or entering into leadership roles with YPO, Susan G. Komen. Talk about now you've got this in your tool bag.
Yes.
And you're now, the plan's starting to get unveiled, as I always like to say. Yeah. And you're at YPO and talk about, in those, parts of the journey, what kind of things were you starting to put in your tool bag as you're moving towards to leadership and ultimately where you're at today?
One of the most important lessons that I took away as the head of marketing for YPO is that high-performing executives tend to value the perspective of other leaders, as well as the wisdom that comes from practical experiences learned by others in very similar circumstances. But most leaders don't have a safe environment where they can share their concerns, where they can share their worries. C-suite executives often feel that any kind of public show of vulnerability or uncertainty introduces risk. Risk that maybe they'll lose the confidence or the respect of their board of directors, their employees, their customers. And so being in a community of other leaders where you feel safe, where you can be transparent, where you can be vulnerable, allows you to have an outlet to continuously learn and to improve in a more confidential setting and to get exposure to new ways of approaching problems and issues, new ways of leveraging opportunities. And I will tell you, Eric, that one of the most important lessons I received is that this kind of safe, supportive environment allows members, and in this case, specifically members of YPO, to develop not only advisory, personal and professional advisory networks, but deep, rich, meaningful friendships with other
Yeah.
CEOs that enrich both their professional and their personal life. And so what I have found is that, being able to be open, transparent, vulnerable in a community where you feel safe is absolutely key to success. And what I know, in fact, I just read a recent study by Stein and Partners, is
Yeah.
that if you are willing to commit to a community where you feel like you are motivated and you are inspired and you're learning and you're growing, members of those kinds of leadership communities experience average revenue growth rates of just above 5% over the prior year. And you may say, well, 5%, that doesn't feel like that much, but that is compared to an industry average of only 1.5%. So that's
Wow.
more than 200% faster growth. And executives who set aside time to attend leadership learning events,
Yeah.
leadership networking exchanges, they're deeply invested in getting to know those other leaders in their community. Well, they experience dramatically superior operating results. So these members enjoyed operating margins of 22% in the prior year. But again, consider that as opposed to the overall average of just 10%. That is more than twice the profitability, just because they're receiving the unbiased, objective guidance, insight, and lived experience from other leaders. And so I know that being in a community of other leaders who have been where you are, who have lived that experience, who can provide unbiased, objective feedback and guidance accelerates your success dramatically.
Wow. Um, Again, that is that because we all deal with it. Look, at the end of the day, it's hey, I'm in this room with these people, and do I deserve to be in this room? Is somebody going to finally call me out in the middle of this meeting? Is it a board member? Is it going to be you're always, as you're going through your career, you're always worried about that. Is somebody going to figure out that I'm still kind of figuring this stuff out? And I kind of like I'm doing this big, I know what I'm doing, but under the covers it's that it's always that visualization of you have this duck and they're smooth on top of the water, but under the covers, they're under the water, they're paddling like crazy.
Yeah.
And getting in a room of people of saying, hey folks, I may not know exactly what the road ahead looks like. I've never experienced this. Can you help me present that I don't have all the answers, and maybe somebody in the room does, because they always say it's it's the lonely at the top. What a great perspective. And I think with AI and the acceleration
Right.
of experience, I think what's happening is that we're going to have this acceleration of intelligence, which is going to push us back to being more connected as human beings. And that we can look up whatever we want, but what do I do? How do I do this?
Yes.
Um, we can begin to see that. And, this kind of leads us to, your Susan G. And then you jump out and go, I'm going to create a community
Yeah.
for female C-level executives.
Right.
And you're jumping out. Okay. Talk to us about that day where you said, I'm going to go do this. And I don't know if 10 people are going to show up or, 100. The courage, obviously I think anybody listening is going to say, okay, Linda will jump into a challenge and hit it, head on.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was any fear. But talk about, you still probably had a little bit of uncertainty. Talks about when you started and what kept you going every day. That 1% glass is half full. Let's talk about that when you
Yeah.
just
I will
started.
tell you that I was confident that I could create a business that would be successful, but that was so naive because that was just honestly foolish bravery. I just was confident. I'm like, it can't be that hard. I can do it. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm wearing all the hats. So wait a sec, I don't have a team to pass this on to. I don't have someone I can delegate this to. I'm responsible for finance, sales, marketing, operations, everything. And then I started recognizing the weight of the decision that I had made and said, well, okay, we're just going to have to figure this out, right? But what was really the impetus for this is that I learned that, so of course, social networks are critical for professional advancement. We all know that, and I certainly learned that in YPO. But research from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University tells us that men and women need very different kinds of networks to succeed, because women in executive leadership often face cultural and political hurdles that men typically do not. So they benefit from a much closer inner circle of close female contacts that can share private, confidential, insider information. Women face a much greater challenge in networking to find professional opportunities and career advancement, and they, much more than men, need to maintain both wide networks and informative inner circles in order to land the very best positions, secure the most advantageous opportunities. But the good news is that by taking a smart approach, I think women can find meaningful advancement options. They can identify and connect with people who are connected to multiple networks, and that's a key strategy. But they also have the opportunity to not only build a large network, but have that close inner circle of women that support them, that champion them, that advise them and encourage them. And that was the vision for LeadHership Global. I really wanted to create a leadership community that, has proven significant benefit, as we talked about, but that was committed to helping women specifically accelerate their success. But as I said initially, it was, a lot of late nights and weekends, kind of building the plane as you fly it, and realizing, oh gosh, that didn't go very well. Let me retool, right? Or golly, I thought that would be really, really impactful, because I know I'd love that, but interesting, not very many other people really enjoyed that. All right, well then maybe we don't do that again. So there can be no sacred cows. Just because you like something doesn't mean everybody else is going to like it. Just because you think something has value doesn't mean anyone else does. And what seems incredibly clear to you can be incredibly confusing to other people. So I will tell you, I was humbled every single week for about 2 years, because everything that I thought I knew from my experience at YPO and Collective 54 did not translate, did not necessarily, it wasn't a one-to-one translation. So I really had to, again, be very vulnerable, very, very transparent, and take those people who were early adopters and early members into LeadHership Global and say, what do you think? What do you want? What's valuable to you? What has meaning to you? What would you like to see happen? What is going to really be impactful for you? And there was just a lot of iteration. So what that meant was I could have absolutely no pride in anything. It was constant reinvention, constant reintroduction, and constant checking in with members about what matters to them. And, I very happily have had members that have been with me the entire journey. And that is just such an incredible testament to their patience and willingness to explore with me. But I will say, as an entrepreneur, your biggest, I think, ability to succeed, the characteristic that will help you succeed more than anything else, is humility and the ability to continue to iterate and experiment and discover. If you have an attitude of just curiosity, that's really interesting, that didn't go anywhere the way I thought it would, that's really interesting. Okay, let me take that as a data point and let me iterate. Let me just be curious about what worked and what didn't, and then learn from that and make it better next time.
Wow. Would you say when I talk to other entrepreneurs and younger, kids that are all, and all they see is all the success at the top of the mountain.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I try to tell them with the code word, when you hear innovation, I go under the covers, the secret code for that is failure. And you got to be able to fail a lot and pick yourself up. And you're another example of what an amazing, like, okay, that didn't work. Let me try something else. And so the humility of going, okay, that did not work. Let me try something else, and coming back and going, what can we do better? So now you get through that. You're humbled enough to keep coming back and going, okay, I thought I had that, didn't. Let me be humble enough to listen, respond, and keep trying, getting up, the grit of just getting up every day. And I'm sure that there was probably days in the first couple of years, like every entrepreneur probably, did you have those experiences of, oh my goodness, what did I do?
Absolutely. And I often thought, I reduced my income. I have doubled my workload, and I am being taught new lessons every single week. And some of them are a little bit difficult. What the heck did I just do? Because I have taken a huge pay cut, and yet I'm working double the hours I did before. And I'm being humbled every single week, learning something new and having to iterate. What am I doing? And the only thing that kept me going is the vision and mission of what I was trying to create. I really felt connected to that. I felt like that really was my purpose. And I think as an entrepreneur, listen, this is hard work. And unless that mission, that vision really fires you up, it's something that is deeply personal to you, something you're passionate about. Nobody would choose to be an entrepreneur because it's hard, right? So you've got to be absolutely passionate, committed about the kind of impact you want to make in the world, to continue to have that kind of grit, to continue to have that kind of mental toughness, and also to continue to show yourself the kind of grace that you need to move forward with confidence, right? And so I think that those ultimately have ended up being incredible lessons for me. I think I'm a better human being now than I was before I began this journey. And part of it too is empathy for others that are on the same sort of journey that I am. I really respect what they're going through, what they've been through. And I think it's allowed me to have a much more open viewpoint, much more focused on experimentation and discovery and simply trying things out rather than being fully committed at the outset to a particular outcome. You absolutely can't be married to an outcome if you're an entrepreneur. You have to be married to the journey. And, that's a different mindset.
Wow. And again, these are just incredible nuggets of wisdom that, I hope, if you get a couple of little things in here, it's just that, hey, you're not alone. It is a tough journey. And, but, let's progress to today. And there's gotta have been nuggets of, like, I'm sure that there's probably one or two stories where you're like, is this sinking in? Are we making a difference? And then somebody comes back to you and says, Linda, what you shared with me, I was able to get that bigger deal, or I was confident in the boardroom to say this or that and identify things. Are there one or two things that were like, because you just need hope.
Yeah.
And business owners and entrepreneurs, you don't need a lot.
Yeah.
But you need a couple of like signals,
Right.
as I like to say, little God winks along the way.
That. Well, I will say, I know we only have about 5 minutes left. So if I were to offer just a couple things that I would say is in those tiny little wins, whether it's, as I said, when I was speaking, hey man, I was at the podium longer today than I was yesterday before I fainted, or you say, wow, I've introduced 3 programs and they weren't as widely embraced as I suspected. And that's disappointing, but it's those tiny little wins that you have to really pay attention to. And now I have an entire digital file of what I call love notes. People who have written me notes saying, you made a difference. You inspired me. You motivated me. You gave me an opportunity. You opened up a door. You created the momentum. You helped me see a possibility. You created an opportunity that I didn't even know was available to me. So that file of love notes tells me that I'm on the right path, right? And sometimes I have to open up that file just to say, no, it matters to somebody somewhere. I know it does. And there are times where you see demonstrably the differences that you've been able to create. You were able to get a scale up, a significant round of funding. You were able to match an entrepreneur with an investor who believes in their vision and were able to create that initial seed round. You were able to move someone from very small stages where they were speaking for free onto really significant stages where every single paycheck's five figures. You've been able to take a company vision from literally just an idea into their first $1 million paycheck. And, those kinds of success stories are happening every month in LeadHership Global now. And so I feel ridiculously blessed and privileged to be witness to the power of community coming together. This isn't just about me. This is about the power of community coming together and deeply investing in each other's success, being willing to carve out the time, the guidance, the experience, or to open up those doors to opportunity that make the difference in someone else's, not just their business, their life. It makes a difference in their life.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really been tremendous.
Well, we gotta wrap it up here, but I always ask, what just incredible, what an incredible story of resilience and grit and perseverance and impact. The impact that you're having, what a blessing. And always like to wrap up the show with this last, is that if suddenly I showed a time machine behind you and you could jump in it and go back and talk to the younger Linda, and you could say, some word of advice, some encouragement to the younger Linda, what would you go back and what would you say to the younger Linda with now the Linda of today?
Yeah, I love that. That's such a powerful question. The first thing I would say is it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Even in the darkest times in someone's life, you have to have hope that it will get better. And if I could go back to the darkest times in my childhood, in my adolescence, those times where I thought, the world is ending and, the sky is falling, I would say to her, it's going to be okay. This is just a moment in time. And you have no idea how blessed your life is going to be. You have no idea how incredibly abundant your life is going to be. Just stay the course. Just stay the course. And the second thing I would say is have confidence. Have confidence because you were uniquely created to have a purpose on earth. God created you with a vision, with a mission, with a purpose, and He will absolutely pave the way for you to fulfill that purpose. But you have to just be obedient to what's in front of you and say yes to the opportunities and be confident that you are here on purpose. And I think if anyone struggles with confidence, the best thing that I could suggest to you is pay attention to those small wins. Pay attention to those places where you did succeed, where you didn't think you'd have a chance, and yet you did succeed. Yet you did sign that contract, get that job. You were able to create that relationship. You were able to land that job. Whatever it is, there are glimmers of forecasts of what's possible. Those successes is kind of a forecast to what is next for you.
Wow. Well, Linda, thank you for sharing your journey, your vision, your life's journey. It is always amazing. And I'm always appreciative and blessed of the incredible people that come on and share their story. And for those that want to learn more about Linda and LeadHership Global, you can visit, it's Lead and then HERshipglobal.com.
Yeah.
And, and we really enjoyed the conversation. And for those, I'll be back next week with, again, truly blessed to have amazing leaders tell their journey and story and show some inspiration. So everybody go out there. I guess today's story is every day has a signal, and every day there's a little bit of hope, and you just need to watch out for it. So take care, everybody. Thank you, Linda, for your time, and we'll catch you next week, everybody.
Thank you, Eric.
The collective wisdom and lessons learned from these conversations have been the inspiration for the business guidance system at 4Impact Data, helping CPA firms grow client advisory services.